Yup, that's Jazzpunk, all right.
That is Jazzpunk, all right. What are we talking about today?
I have no idea, man. And one of my favorite things about Jazzpunk is its visual and sound aesthetics. I really enjoy the 1960s inspired futurism, the spy fiction themes, the mod fashion.
A little Katamari Damacy with, relatively simplistic 3D objects, but everything still has a veracity to it. You don't see too many video games that take design cues from, like, Saul Bass. There was a little bit of this, years ago when we had things like No One Lives Forever. Psychonauts cribs a little bit from this sort of territory. Yeah, it's not often you play a video game that looks like a Jay Ward cartoon.
Where it gets its like I think where it gets its style, like the style of the game this is from things like Humongous Entertainment and the Living Book series, which were like interactive cartoons. They would be like a cartoon show or a storybook that was being read, and it would after a scene played out, it would stop and it would just kind of give you this screen to click things and find little things to interact with. And it would they would play unique animations and sounds, and the characters would respond to it. Instead of just being a story or a cartoon, it would be this little kind of uh, miniature world on the screen that you explored. And that's kind of what jazz punk really does here. It puts you in this little playground area. It's pushing you through a story, but the main meat of the game is to see this world and just see what happens when you interact with it. Oh,
This bit right here is the whoopee cushion. Like it kind of like encapsulates how this game is very dry and urbane, but at the same time it'll do something very silly and dumb. And it walks that tightrope really well.
Another thing is, even though this is very much in the style of those old Humongous Entertainment and Living Book series games, the audience for those was exclusively young children, whereas this game definitely has a more like general audience kind of vibe to it. It's not quite as juvenile. There's more maturity.
That was a very mature whoopee cushion gag.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, this was at a time when like LOL so random type humor was, still pretty prevalent. And on paper, a game like, well, what's this video game? It's nothing but gags and references. And like, ordinarily think, oh God, that would be awful. Why would I play something like that? But then you see this game and it's moody, it's stylish, it feels more Philip K. Dick than the actual Blade Runner game. I love the movie theater. Like one thing, actually, that's one thing I noticed. Like right away, is like one of the movies is called "Occult Is My Password," and that is a reference to a Japanese gangster movie called "Occult Is My Passport." And right when I saw that gag, like, okay, that's the kind of jokes they're doing in this game. Then these are some cool people to vibe with. I want to see what these guys got in store.
Yeah, it is full of references, many of which I did not understand, but many of which I also did. I think they do a pretty good job at not requiring the player to understand where these come from in order to enjoy, though. Yeah, I think a lot of the thing with the callbacks and the humor in this is it's done more lovingly than it is like mockingly. If you just do the objective of the level, this whole game would probably be less than 10 minutes long. It's very brief, you know. You know, the density comes from the exploration and the curiosity of the player.
You also see a lot of games these days that absolutely don't want you to miss anything. So, like, even though there's things to discover, quote unquote, they're like leaving these less than subtle breadcrumbs for the player. And whereas here, you had to actually put in the work to explore, to find things. Like, just watching this footage, I saw like two or three different bits or gags that I missed on my playthrough.
It's really not hyperbole to say that developers do want you to see their work. I've seen many just outright say they wanted the player to look at this, so they made the game so the player had to look at it. And I've also heard stories of development of like, why would we put all this work into something the player could just walk by and never see in the first place, you know? So a game where that is kind of like completely thrown aside, like Jazzpunk, is very interesting. It is not part of that mindset whatsoever. So this is a very short game. This is only going to take you, if you are a very explorative person, this will probably take you about 3 hours, like an hour, you know?
Yeah, if you're really trying to comb for like every single. I see. I missed this. I didn't realize they had Frogger inside this game. I spent some time playing their fake version of Quake that they had, the wedding themed
Oh,
version of
wedding
Quake.
cake.
Yeah.
Welcome to Wedding Cake Select Honeymoon
I played around to
Destination.
that, and then I played another one. I was like, no, I have to get first place.
Come now into the wormhole.
I like how the game goes on like these very weird little tangents. Like there's one like extended sequence later on that's a tribute to the show Sliders.
I don't know what Sliders is.
Sliders was this sci-fi show. I think it was on Fox about like these four people that would go through portals trying to return to regular Earth, but they keep going to different dimensions.
That's what I'm talking about. When I said earlier, you don't really need to understand these references to enjoy the jokes. I went through that whole thing. That was just a funny series of like the world changing and stuff.
Also, I think it helps that Jazzpunk, for the most part, was everything it was referencing was something from decades ago. It's not like Borderlands where it's like, hey, we want to be like new, so we're going to reference this meme. But because game development takes like 5 years, plus that, it feels stale. Here, everything is either very esoteric, or if it is a reference, it's a very old reference. So it has that nostalgia buffer to it. It's difficult to talk about what makes a joke funny. That's always very hard. But I think one thing that sets Jazzpunk apart is that I really can't think of any other video game that has this kind of humor to it. Jazzpunk, it's a hell of a game. Go play it. We don't want to like spoil all the jokes in it because part of the fun is just going out there and exploring this game.
I think it's best to think of Jazzpunk as something to experience more than play.
Is Jazzpunk a walking simulator?
Yeah, I think I'd say it would fall under that category.
Much like PT, Jazzpunk is very much about walking around through environments and then it messes with you in unexpected ways.
Now that's a comparison. Jazzpunk, the PT that time forgot.
Yeah, Jazzpunk, it's PT, but for gags.